Good morning, friends. Welcome to the weekly worship service of the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church. I am your worship leader, Claudia Marshall. My pronouns are she and her. I'm so very glad that you can join me in this sacred space. We are exactly where we need to be this morning. So let's breathe and open our hearts to this morning service. Unitarian Universalism is a living, evolving faith based on seven principles. We are a covenantal faith. We agree to live by these principles. We live by the saying, deeds, and not creeds. To learn more about Unitarian Universalism, please visit www.uua.org. BBUUC is a welcoming church. And even though currently we are practicing social distancing, we are still a congregation. We have several groups that meet virtually. We are carrying on our groups with family and youth groups. Our fall activities will be starting soon, including eye care, which you can read about in the journey. For more information about BBUUC, please visit our webpage at bbuuc.org and our Facebook community page. Our chalice lighting this morning. For when things aren't okay. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love.
We have cleared off the table, the leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I have told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can go whoever you will. You can travel any country that your wild heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Some girls grow up to be strong and bold, some boys are quiet and kind, some race on ahead and some follow behind. We all grow in our own space and time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children and some never do. You can dream all the day, never reaching the end of everything possible for you. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whoever you will. You can travel any country where your wild heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose a few special ones, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games. Seek out spirits kind and true. If you give this old world the very best of yourself, it will return the same to you. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whoever you will. You can travel any country that your white heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, but the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
So I haven't been able to get through singing this song once without tearing up. Mostly I think it's in gratitude for the ways my parents paved a new world for me to love and live in, for the ways I know I'm making space for my children to love and live at their best, and for the ways I know they'll surpass me and expand beyond me and make this world better for those who follow behind them. Thank you to the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church for the invitation to learn and share this song. And thank you, Fred Small, for writing it.
Ours is a spiritual community where we find and forge connection. At this time in our service, we pause to reflect on our week. We recall the milestones, the joys and concerns, the changes in our lives, those who need our healing thoughts. Community is deepened by sharing with each other what is in our hearts so that we can offer support to one another as we journey together as a faith community. We invite you to send your joys and concerns to share during worship during the church office by the Tuesday preceding the service until we are back in our sanctuary. Today, we hold the first light in all of those who are working on the front lines in hospitals, nursing homes, grocery stores, and service industries. All those workers who are risking their lives and those of their families during this summer COVID surge. We'll light a flame of concern for our school teachers, administrators, and staff who, along with our students, are returning to the classroom at a time of concern for health risks to all, and where masks are not mandated. We hope that safety measures will be followed and that our children will have a happy and safe school year. We'll light a flame for all of those who are sick and those who are dying in isolation, especially those we know and those who are loved by those we know. We light a flame for those grieving deaths of all causes. We invite you to hold the names of those you know in your hearts. We light a flame of recognition of the enormity of this pandemic's impact on each of us, those we love, on our church community, on everyone, especially those already challenged by poverty, racism, transphobia, ableism, xenophobia, and more. We light this final flame in recognition of all the joys and sorrows and milestones which remain unspoken, but which we keep in our hearts. May each of us be encouraged toward ever more compassionate living. These flames remind us that we are kindred souls, and there is love that cares for all. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. While our sanctuary is closed, we remind ourselves that our church is more than the building where we meet. We are the congregation. And even in times of difficulty, when we aren't able to be with one another, we remain committed to supporting our mission and ministry, our staff and facility, and our shared values. Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church has committed to early payoff of all our promissory notes, which constitute our building's mortgage, no later than November 1st, 2021. Early payoff will free up substantial cash flow each year for use in our operating budget through May 2030 to grow our ministries of love and care, serving the mission of BBUUC. A capital campaign has been initiated for donations to fund this effort and has been encouraged by a very generous $50,000 in matching funds. There are several ways you can donate to the capital campaign to promissory note payoff. Of course, you can use a PayPal link, you can use the Breeze link, or you can write us a check. Please contact us for more information. And thank you so much for your very generous donation. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. Sooner or later, everything falls away. You, the work you've done, your successes, large and small, your failures too. Those moments when you were light alongside the times you became one with the night. The friends, the people you loved, who loved you, those who might have wished you ill. None of this is forever. All of it is soon to go, or going, or long gone. Everything falls away, except the thread you followed, unknowing all along. The thread that strings together all that you've been and done, the thread you didn't know you were tracking until toward the end. You see that thread is what stays as everything else falls away. Follow that thread as far as you can, and you'll find that it does not end, but weaves into the unimaginable vastness of life. Your life never was the solo turn it seemed to be. It was always part of the great weave of nature and humanity, an immensity we come to know only as we follow our own small threads to the place where they merge with the boundless whole. Each of our threads runs its course, then joins in life together. This magnificent tapestry, this masterpiece in which we live forever.
Good morning, Buckman Bridge. So good to be with you this morning. I look forward to the day when we can safely regather in person in our sanctuary. And in the meantime, thanks for keeping each other safe. So as you have heard, I'm currently serving as the solo staff chaplain at Baptist Nassau in Fernandina Beach. As you also know, our hospital is in a conservative community, religiously and politically. About 47%, I think the last time I checked, about 47% of the county's population had been vaccinated against the COVID virus. And of course, we all know that Governor DeSantis has made some interesting decisions about managing the virus in our state. So all of that is to say our hospital has been very busy, as have many hospitals. There are predictions that things could get worse before they get better, although our COVID numbers have seen improvement over the last couple of days. I hope we're on a decline in cases now because truthfully, our staff, especially our nurses and our respiratory therapists, are physically and emotionally exhausted. Here's the thing, they know how to work through exhaustion. What scares me are moments when they feel disheartened, for we surely need courage and compassion to see us through this. As one of our CNAs said to me recently, there's just no joy in healthcare right now. Can you imagine being boots on the ground in these circumstances and finding no joy in your work as politics rage on about vaccines and masking, basic human courtesies, really, that I think should be no-brainers in this point in a pandemic, or always. So things are grim, and yet, grace abides. Day after day, I witness all of our teams offering excellent, compassionate, dedicated care to one another and to all of those entrusted to us, the vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. I see our hospital president dressed in scrubs, snapping on blue gloves, using stair cloths to clean surfaces and phones in ICU, helping to transport patients. I see our chief financial officer in full PPE delivering food trays to COVID rooms every day at lunchtime. I see the environmental services staff doing what they always do, all those little things that make the big things possible, invisible yet steady in their care of our house. So yes, grace abides. Grace is an interesting word to use in a Unitarian Universalist sermon. In secular terms, grace is thought of as benevolent goodwill between and among us. In Christian theology, grace is considered the unmerited gift of divine favor in the salvation of sinners. In Unitarian Universalist theology, grace is empathy, writes Natalie Briscoe. We know Natalie, she's co-lead of the Southern Region UUA, and I think she gets to the heart of the matter for us. Grace is empathy, that embodied, soulful, heartfelt knowledge and understanding we have for one another, human being to human being, living creature to living creature, especially during times of suffering. For me, extending such grace to another is the spiritual practice that helps me to best live the ethics of our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In this time of politics and pandemic, it feels even more important to engage in the spiritual practice of extending grace to others because it reflects both personal freedom and personal responsibility as I search for truth and meaning in this time of fracture and fear and overwhelming death. Let's talk about death for a minute. Anna Sale, who is the host of the podcast Death, Sex, and Money and author of Let's Talk About Hard Things, says that we are often tentative in our conversations around death, so they end shy of real connection. Skipping the conversation about death because the words are not coming easily is shirking away from death's ultimate challenge, she says, and that is to use our time well and with intention. That's worth repeating, so please hear it again. Skipping the conversation about death because the words are not coming easily is shirking away from death's ultimate challenge to use our time well and with intention. And we know that's important to us as Unitarian Universalists because we are so often thinking about life before death. And I think that's what using our time well and with intention is all about. Now, in these times, when we are reminded of the swiftness of our human lives and the unpredictabilities of our deaths, I believe that actually considering our own deaths and connecting with, talking with those we love about our death is part of using our time well and with intention. So this morning, I encourage you to risk a bold rather than tentative conversation about your death with those you love and those who love you. And I encourage you to talk about three things. First, say the things you need to say, and there are usually four things that need to be said. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. Second, get very specific about the things you want when you begin to face decline and end of life, and share what you want with those who will be caring for you and making choices for you should you no longer be able to do that. Third, consider the legacy of your life. What is it? What would you like for it to be? And if there's a gap between those two stories, what would you like to do or say to narrow that gap? Let's go deeper. So as to the first thing, saying what you need to say to the people you love most. Palliative care physician Dr. Ira Byock famously writes about the four things that matter most, and that these 11 simple words can change our living and our dying. The words are, please forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, I love you. These sound like such simple phrases, but trust me, when everything is pulled back to the essentials and every breath is precious, these simple phrases become profound messages of truth, meaning, and empathic grace. I could do a year of sermons about forgiveness. It can be some of the hardest emotional heavy lifting we are ever called to do. The important thing to understand about forgiveness is that it helps us avoid being stuck in the past. It allows us to move forward into life and, frankly, also into death. Please forgive me, and I forgive you are acknowledgments of our shared humanity, statements of fact that our imperfections may, at times, have caused us to harm or hurt another person, or to have been harmed or hurt by another person, hopefully never by design, and yet still painful even if carelessly or by mistake. The please that's part of the statement, please forgive me, acknowledges that forgiveness is not a given in any relationship. There is humility and contrition in the please. Forgiveness is the antidote to regret, which can gnaw like an insatiable rat at our hearts and minds and spirits. Please forgive me, and I forgive you are the short statements that turn the rats of regret away, small statements representing big thoughts and big feelings. I'm sorry that I hurt, or disappointed, or neglected, or betrayed you. I seek your forgiveness for my sake and for yours. I offer forgiveness for the same reasons. Next of the phrases was thank you, and thank you is our statement of gratitude for things large and small that help us build memories and meaning in our wild and precious life. Your gratitude is unique to you as your life is unique to you. And saying thank you for the things that touched you, moved you, taught you, challenged you, brought you comfort and joy, all of that thank you is your acknowledgement of those precious moments that have happened since you drew your first breath and will be meaningful to you until you draw your last breath. Hopefully each one of us knows what it means to hear, to say, to feel the sentiment behind the words, I love you. Again, so much is encompassed by those words. I see you, I cherish you, I am the me I am because I am in relationship with you. I love you is easy for some of us to say and harder for others among us. So if it is easy, I encourage you to say it as often as you can. And if it is hard, I encourage you to say it as often as you can. Saying these 4 things that matter most is the first thing I want you to consider as part of the freedom, responsibility, truth, meaning, and empathic grace you will practice in a well-lived, intentional life before death. Yes, Bayak offers them as words to share at end of life, but I encourage you to find ways to say them often and in the meantime. So remember, there are 3 things I'm asking you to consider this morning. The first is saying what you need to say to the people you love, and we've just spent some time with that. The second thing I ask you to consider is telling the people you love what you want, very specifically what you want, when you begin to face decline and end of life. By this I mean taking the time to create a legal document that sets forth your wishes and desires for treatment when you are no longer able to speak for yourself. Different states use different tools, living wills and healthcare surrogates. There is a form called Honoring Choices, and if you're interested in that, I can surely get you an Honoring Choices form. So living will and healthcare surrogate may be familiar terms to you, but I want you to go deeper and also consider code status as part of those wishes we have for the care of our embodied selves at end of life. I want to be really clear in this moment. I am not giving you any legal advice. Please consult your own attorney or state statutes about the requirements for your state if you're not in Florida. What I am offering you is a chaplain's advice about this gift of empathic grace to your family members during a time of crisis and suffering. Tell them what you want before you need it and before they have to make a decision for you during a healthcare crisis. Get specific about your code status. So full code means you want every effort made to save and preserve your life. DNR, do not resuscitate, means that you do not want to receive any life-saving treatment should you suffer a cardiopulmonary event that would otherwise end your life. Limited code means that you want pharmaceutical help to keep you alive, but you draw the line at electrical shocks and chest compressions that can be traumatic to an already injured or suffering body. And finally, allow natural death. A and D means you want to be kept comfortable, as anxiety-free and pain-free as possible as your life naturally draws to an end. Having witnessed so much heartbreaking decision-making during healthcare crisis over the last year and a half, I urge you with all that I am to get very specific with your family about what you want. Again, being very courageous with this conversation is a reflection of the freedom, responsibility, truth, meaning, and empathic grace that help us live well and intentionally a good life before death. When you've discerned your wishes and choices, share them not only with your family, but also with your physician and with your minister, that all may be advocates for you when the time comes, and that those people may help support your family during that time. As we began this morning, I shared there were 3 things I would ask you to consider as part of a well-lived life before death. First was saying what you need to say to the people you love. Second was telling the people you love what you want for your embodied self, very specifically what you want for your embodied self when the time comes to make that decision. I'll close now with the third thing to consider, and that is the legacy of your life. What is it? What would you like for it to be? And if there is a gap between those 2 stories, what would you like to do to begin to narrow that gap? As encouragement for why this is important, I want to offer you a story from a moment of chaplaincy during the time of COVID. A while back, I was speaking to the adult child of an elderly patient who was admitted to our hospital through the emergency department. During admission, she had been sitting up in bed, laughing about some ridiculous things in the news. On the same day, after she was moved from ED to a regular room, she was still sitting up in bed, not laughing now, but complaining via phone call to her son that it had taken over 3 hours to get a simple Coke brought to her room. Yes, we are that busy in the hospital. Within 48 hours of sitting up, laughing, complaining, connecting voice to ear connecting voice to ear with her son by telephone, the patient was moved to the ICU and intubated. As you may or may not know, when people are intubated on a ventilator, they are given medication to paralyze them so that they do not harm themselves with movement or trying to remove the ventilator, which is very uncomfortable. This also means that they are no longer able to speak. This was a despairing situation for her son, who, as her healthcare surrogate, had to make a decision about her plan of care. He asked for time with me as the chaplain to help in his discernment. In situations like this, it's important for me to know about the patient and the family's religious and spiritual lives, which may or may not be the same. It's important for me to review the family's understanding of the medical information they've received, which frankly can be overwhelming. So with an understanding of the spiritual grounding of patient and family, and a review of the medical facts as the family understands them to be, I then ask them about their person's life legacy. Sometimes I'll ask the question directly, what do you think your person considers their legacy to be? And speaking about that helps them in the discernment about the plan of care for their person, or to get comfortable with the plan of care if their person was wise and had one in place, as we talked about just a few minutes ago. Sometimes, as I did with this son, I asked him to read the sacred text of relationship with his mother. If you consider the way your mother lived her life and the way she lived her life in relationship with you and others, what does that sacred text tell you about the choices she would make now if she could, and the choices she would want to make, she would want you to make on her behalf at this time? Her son sighed with relief as he faced hard decisions because his mother had been clear throughout a lifetime of choices about what she would choose now, about the last hours of her life before death, and he knew what he must do to honor her. I realize this is a hard conversation for most of us to have. There are so many taboos and superstitions about it. It is an uncomfortable conversation. This morning, I ask you to consider conversations and connections with your loved ones about your own death as an act of empathic grace that reflects a well lived and intentional life, lived freely and responsibly, filled with truth and meaning. Tell them the 4 things that matter most. Tell them very specifically your wishes and desires for your embodied self at end of life, and reflect together on the legacy of your life and the sacred text of your relationship. Grace abides, and indeed, it abides in you. Blessed be, and Amen. Would you take a deep breath with me now as we close this worship service? May you live well and with intention, trusting in your capacity for grace and empathy, confident in your courage to do hard things freely and responsibly, mindful of the steadfast and creative love that holds us all, peaceful in the sacred stories of your life and in their telling by those who love you. Amen.